Hello, I'm Steve Benoy, Director of Ordinands in the Diocese, and I lead the team which helps people explore if God is calling them to some kind of lay or ordained ministry in the church, and then supports them through that selection process and then on into their initial training. I'm grateful for the chance to share a few thoughts in these final weeks as we prepare for Angela Hammett to be ordained and to join you in ministry here. You'll appreciate there's quite a few practicalities around her ordination we can't be quite sure about just yet, like exactly when it's going to happen, for example, most likely towards the end of September. But whatever happens, at the end of June, her initial training ends, and she'll be joining in with the ministry of the church here. Thank you for all you'll be giving to her in the coming years, and I'm confident that you'll receive from her as well. Angela and Chris are a lovely couple. They're devoted to one another and to the Lord. They both bring considerable experience of serving different churches over the years and have done so with thoughtful wisdom and a keen desire to see people come to know Jesus for themselves. I'm so glad she's joining you at the same time that Nick Edwards is moving into a new parish in Northampton for his curacy. Some of you may remember him from a couple of years ago. There's something I think of the gospel here, that in sowing Nick, you're reaping Angela. Thank you for the blessing. You've been to another parish by giving Nick and Becca away. There's a couple of things I'd like to ask you to do for Angela in the coming period. The first is something I'm sure you've been doing already, and I'm confident you'll keep doing, and that's to pray for her and for Chris as they prepare for this next step of faith. Pray that they'll settle well, they'll grow in faith, and that Angela herself will be strengthened in ministry among you for whatever the Lord has for her in the future. And the second thing is to encourage her. Angela is a curate, which means this is a training post for the next few years, after which she'll move on somewhere else. So it's a time to try some things out. Now, some things Angela tries will work really well, and when that happens, you'll encourage her. Some of the things she tries out maybe might not go quite to plan, and when that happens, encourage her. We've got great confidence in a diocese, in you as a church community, and in Paula as Angela's training incumbent, to provide just this kind of prayerful and encouraging community for Angela and Chris in the coming years. Now, Angela is someone who really gets the idea that ministry is about the whole church, not simply for people with roles and labels. The clergy are here to enable the whole church's ministry. To be ordained is simply to play one part, to focus, to enable, to equip, to inspire the whole church to share in God's work. Think about those verses from Luke's Gospel. The Lord appointed 72 and sent them to every town and place he was about to go. The harvest is plentiful, he said, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Now, those came from the start of chapter 10 of Luke's Gospel, but if you look back at the start of chapter 9, you'll see that there Jesus calls 12 together and sends them out on mission. If he'd only done that, well, we might have some justification for thinking that God's work is only meant to be done by special people. I'm afraid to say that Jesus didn't give us that get-out. Just one chapter later, there's 72 others who get to join in too. Well, there's three things that occur to me from this about how we might fulfill that same calling as disciples and servants of Jesus. And the first is this: vision. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. It's been said that ministry is about seeing what God is up to and joining in. As a church, it's good for us to be thinking about the kinds of things Jesus would do if he were around here, or spotting the kinds of things Jesus would join in with if he were around here. Who are the particular people? What are the particular ways we can show the love of God to the people we're amongst and point the way to Jesus? I loved it as a vicar when people came to me and said, "We need to do something about such and such." Perhaps they wanted somebody else to do something about it, but at least there was vision. Now, I loved it even more when people came to me and said, "I've been praying about such and such, and I wonder if the church should do this." And that's the second thing, prayer. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field. How are you praying for your community, for your church, for your school or college, your workplace, your neighbourhood? Who are you praying for? What things really concern you, and how is the Lord laying this on your heart? Some years ago I was part of a group of youth leaders across about 20 churches in South London, where the young people in our churches were badgering us to help them reach into some of the tougher estates and youth centres in the area. After a couple of years, a thing called Oxygen was born, which worked with the council youth service, the local schools, and which took over an old Victorian church hall in an old Victorian church as a base for a Christian youth centre. We discovered about a year into starting the project that for maybe 5 years previously, a small group of Christians from a different part of London had been praying specifically for this church, that it would be a base for outreach to young people in the area. That was so encouraging. They only told us a year after we'd started. It's the 20th anniversary next year. Prayer fuels mission. I loved it when someone came up to me and said, "Vicar, we should do something about such and such." But I loved it even more when someone came to me and said, "I've been praying about such and such, and I wonder if the church should do this." Now, what was even better was when someone said, "I've been praying about such and such, and would it be okay if I got some people together and we tried this?" Vision, prayer, commitment. Go, says Jesus. I'm sending you out. What is it that we'll be prepared to give ourselves to? This might be costly. It might change plans. It might risk our reputation or our popularity. It might reveal our true colours at work or amongst our friends. It might involve us with people we might otherwise want to avoid. We're living in times where many people are asking important questions about what the church will be like in the future. So much of our regular pattern of church life has changed during the past few months or so, for so many, and it's natural to ask whether we'll go back to doing things the way we used to. Well, we've got time now to ask the Lord of the harvest what field he's sending us back into. Back to the one we were in? Deeper into the one we are in new ways amongst the people round here? Or perhaps to consider new fields to work, to sow, and to reap a harvest. Well, may the Lord continue to bless you as you consider these things, as Angela joins you in working the harvest field around here, and as you pray for and encourage one another in God's work. Amen.